So first, can you like introduce yourself for the audience in Taiwan?
Sure. So my name is Jeff Puls. I'm the head strength and conditioning coach for the Chicago Bulls. Um, I've got a little bit of a backstory here. I graduated high school and joined the Marine Corps right after high school. So I was in the U.S. military in the Marine Corps for a little over 4 years. Did a couple of tours of duty to Iraq following 9/11 and Operation Iraqi Freedom and all that stuff. So that gave me a good opportunity to kind of figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And I loved fitness. I loved staying in shape. I loved being in the weight room. I one of the few who actually like to run a little bit. So I knew I wanted to kind of be in that field. I played sports growing up. I loved working with athletes. So I wanted to figure out how I could stay involved with fitness, but yet be involved with sports, which is a passion that I have. And when I went to college, I initially went there not knowing what strength and conditioning was. I wanted to be a physical therapist. Um, Got to college, took my prereqs, took some of those entry level classes. Did not like it very much at all, but I did get introduced to this wonderful thing called strength conditioning while I was at college, and that kind of took off from there. It bloomed, and I excelled at school, and I got done as fast as I could just to get a job. And I just was fortunate enough to make great connections and did a couple internships as we do. And I ended up getting my first job out of grad school. I went to grad school at the University of Minnesota. My first job at the University of Notre Dame, and it was a great experience, a growing experience. Worked with a million different sports, from fencing to tennis to lacrosse to helping out with basketball and hockey. It was great. And then I was very fortunate to have some colleagues here at the Chicago Bulls that there was a position open, and they thought I was a good fit for it, and I went for it and got it, and I've been here ever since. That was I'm going on my sixth or seventh year here with the Chicago Bulls. So that's me in a nutshell right there. That's the last 20 years.
Enjoy it so far?
I love it, man. I love it. This is one of the best jobs in the world.
Dream job, right?
That's right.
So, uh, like you mentioned, you work with like different sports in Notre Dame College,
Mhm.
University, sorry. Um, I have some like friends, colleagues, they want to be in the league, and this is what we heard of. Like, if we want to go to the league, like NBA, we should be stay focused on basketball. So what are your thoughts on like jobs
Yeah.
previous or like guys want to go to the league?
Yep. That's a great question, and I think a lot of young strength coaches do kind of battle with that. The first thing I'll say is there's only so many basketball jobs. So obviously not everybody can have one. And if they're passionate about basketball, I definitely say, pursue that and stay involved. And I can't speak for all the other coaches in the NBA, but me personally, I really like it when strength coaches have other experiences besides basketball. The being able to do a needs analysis on a fencer, a sport that I have had no experience in, that helps me when I'm doing a needs analysis for a 7 foot big who can't stretch the floor. It just helps you in the process of being a strength coach and developing programs. Every sport I worked in at Notre Dame outside of basketball, I had never played before. I'd never played tennis before at any kind of level. Obviously, recreationally, we play sports, but I worked with lacrosse programs. I'd never played lacrosse before. And I can always look back, and I took something from each of those sports. And whether it's an overhead rotational sport, or fencing is a very unilateral lunging sport. Um, Hockey's it's not even, you're played on skates, you're playing on ice. Like but again, the hip training, the lower body training in hockey, there's so many things you can take away and apply and say, hey man, if I could apply these concepts to a basketball player within the needs of basketball, oh man, we can do great things. So I always like young coaches to have a vast array of experience in other sports. I don't want them to get too niched too early in basketball. I think you can become too narrow focused and not expand your breadth of knowledge. So you can go either way. That being said, you should know the game of basketball really well if you're going to coach it and be a strength coach in it. So Yeah, I know that's a long answer, but
I love
I
it.
for somebody with a lot of experience, but has a passion and focus for basketball.
I love it. I love it. So I want to like dive a little bit deeper into this question.
Sure.
Um, for like coaching all the other sports, like you mentioned, is there like any specific, like, is it movement? Is it like power development that like kind of help you like when you help your basketball? Is it like specific thing that you think that came out of like the other athletes?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. You know, it's I'm a I'm very foundational at my core of strength and conditioning, right? I'm not going to train a lacrosse player to be better at his skill of lacrosse. I want to train him to be better physically for the game of lacrosse. Same thing with hockey, same thing with tennis. You know, you look at the sport and how it's played and the planes of motion, again, the needs analysis for, is it a lower body dominant sport? Is it an upper body rotational sport? And you develop your training program around that and say, okay, I need this athlete. He's right-handed. He serves overhand right-handed. We're going to look at that right side rotator cuff. But being a strength coach, being a student of human movement, I don't want to neglect that left side either. I also know it's a rotational sport. So do I need rotational power? Do I need trunk stability? Hips are driving all that. So now I have to think, okay, we have to sprint, we have to cut, and we have to develop power rotationally. What can I do to create a program and to administer exercises that are going to help that? We have to decel. Are we going to train deceleration more? But we also have to be powerful. Are we going to focus on power? And you develop that through your periodized program. And like I said before, there's just so much crossover, man. Like you can program for power, and the same exercises you give to a basketball player might be the same for football, might be the same for hockey, tennis, so on and so forth. So yes, you think about it, but at the same time, you're training the human being, you're training the physical aspect within the realm of the sport. You're not training the skill of the sport. So, and I think we talk about transfer of training, and I do think sometimes that gets lost of, listen, man, a squat transfers, getting stronger transfers, getting more power vertically, horizontally, laterally, rotationally. It doesn't, that all transfers to sport. So we don't have to get so cute with it. Sometimes the simple stuff done well works really, really well.
Nice, nice. So, the next thing I want to ask is the next topic is about like the force plate.
Yeah.
Like basically, is it like basically every team has force plate right now?
And like every team has a force plate now. It's become so, I think that's the most popular added sports science tool in the last 10 years.
Cool. So, when it comes to force plate, I know there's gonna be like peak power impulse, eccentric impulse. Daniel both just recently just published a book. So, when it comes to like force plate, is there like certain like metrics you're gonna look into?
You kind of hit the big ones on the head there. We're looking at impulse, we're looking at peak force, we're looking at variables with a time component involved, right? So, we know that change of direction happens. We know that uh, ground contact during sprinting at top speed versus acceleration happens at different time components. Jumping's tough because we're so limited in our ability to test. And I say jumping stuff because typically we just do a counter movement jump with our guys and an isometric mid thigh pull. Mid thigh pull is very simplistic. You're getting peak force. You may look at the time component. We don't. We just look at peak force. But the counter movement jump's kind of the biggest bang for our buck. If we have time, we'll repeat hop guys, and that'll give you a little bit more of that reactive index and kind of look at that ground contact time. But for the most part, we don't try to overanalyze, one test on a force plate or two tests on a force plate. We'll compare one guy to himself. We're not comparing him to the rest of the population because every guy's so unique. And the fact that these are the top 0.1% best basketball athletes in the world, right? So I got to compare one athlete to himself. But again, we're looking at the guys, they like to look at their jump height. So we look at jump height. And that's actually a pretty good tracker over time when we get to this level of, are you fatigued or are you making improvements? Or for one of the younger guys, then again, peak power, impulse. We'll look at some of the eccentric qualities, especially the time components. And the big one for us that we track a little more closely in season is going to be our asymmetry data. And we'll pair that with our Nord board and our force frame. But just looking at, we don't freak out if a guy's asymmetrical within reason, but we do want to track and see if that's changing over time in a way that we're not happy with. It's also a good way for us to kind of check our work a little bit. We'll jump a guy and we'll develop this fingerprint of this guy, right? Because every jump is different. Every guy's different. It's like a fingerprint. And we'll say, okay, looking at these qualities, looking at his force output, looking at the time components, looking at the impulse, the asymmetries, let's guide our program a little bit to make it more specific for this individual. And what does he need to improve? What is he really good at that we want to keep him really good at? We'll implement our program and then we'll check our work. We'll retest and see if the training took effect. Did what we do, what did we plan, did that work? And if it didn't, then we have to ask the question of, what did we do? Maybe not wrong, but what could we have done better? Or why didn't it work? Or maybe it worked great and we're like, okay, cool. What's the next problem with this guy? Or if everything's great, how can we keep him great? So the force plates are an awesome, awesome tool. They assist in our programming. They don't drive our programming. And I think a lot of coaches now, they use the force plate as the end all be all of like, okay, this guy has really low impulse. He's slow on the force plate. Maybe he's just a bad jumper, watch him move, assess him when he's training in the weight room. And you can make really good assessments of guys that way as well. But again, the force plate, it's an objective tool that you can use to, really hone in your programming to get what the guys need.
I love it. I love it. So now like I have like access to force plate, and I know like many strength coaches have access to force plate, but I think there's a lot of strength coach has like the same issue is, even we have force plate, the athlete won't like, it's not like jumping the vertex. They can see how much there's a competition in it. But when it comes to like force plate, they're not giving them all to like, no matter like counter movement jump or rebound jump. So from your experience, what would you do to like help like younger strength coaches or your colleague to like convince the athlete to just do whatever they can at the force plate?
Yeah, the force plates, if you have access to them, that's the other challenge, right? Is getting the athlete, even, I'll admit it, like we try to jump our guys at least, and we don't do it as frequent as other teams, but, once a week to once every other week. And sometimes the monotony, you'll see athletes dipping off in their metrics just because they're not giving you 100%. The way we've circumvented this is we use the Vald suite. I don't want to promote them or anything, but we happen to use their suite, and they do a nice thing called the leaderboard, which I know other force plate companies do this as well, but it's that competitive nature of these athletes that they can see where they are compared to their teammate who just jumped before them. And that really helps us kind of get those juices going. That ups the effort. The other thing is the communication with the athlete saying, hey man, like we need this effort from you so we can give you the correct programming. So we can help you improve where you need to improve. Because if you improve, you're going to get more playing time. You're going to be better at basketball. Your goals are going to be achieved. My paycheck doesn't go up if I get a guy to go to the All-Star game, but he's going to be a lot happier if he does. So I got no skin in the game, but to give a great training program. All I'm asking from the guys, he gives me the best effort when we're assessing him so that I can give him the best program. So there's a couple of ways. A lot of it's the relationship. The other one is just playing off of their competitive nature and trying to let them see their results to some extent. They don't need to see everything, but we'll give them the easy stuff.
Cool. So that kind of lead me to the other question is like, when we do the test, like there's a jump height, there's a like impulse, no matter eccentric impulse, like concentric impulse. So there should be guys like jump super high. They have like crazy vertical jumps, but that probably didn't like transfer to what they do on the court. They probably aren't that coordinated. They probably like the decision making isn't that fast. So what happens is they have like crazy amount of vertical and it didn't transfer.
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's part of the, I guess that's part of the art of strength and conditioning, right? Like, why are your physical qualities not transferring onto the court? There's a myriad of reasons, right? And it could be anything. Like we counter move and jump guys. What happens when a guy is a 1 foot jumper and needs a running start? He's not a 2 foot jumper that can stand there and take off, right? So again, that's an acquired skill. That's a preference. The guy's been doing it for 20 years and we're asking him to jump a completely different way than what he's comfortable with. So that may be the issue there, where he doesn't jump well but performs well. I've had other guys that jump really well, but at the speed of the game, they're more focused on the skill acquisition than they are about, really getting up there and dunking. I can get a guy who can do a one-off jump and he might be able to get up there for the first rebound, but if he needs to get off the ground quick for that second, maybe he missed the first one, he needs to get off the ground and get that repeat jump. Maybe he's not very good at that. Okay. Maybe we didn't 5-hop a guy, so we didn't know that. Again, we're using the art of coaching to visualize this and say, okay, we see where you're lacking. We can implement a plan to help you with that. So a lot of it is, the force plate's great. It gives you objective information, but it does not replace the art of coaching. It doesn't replace my eyes, your eyes, our ability to assess an athlete without objective measures.
Cool. So there's force plate. So when it comes to force plate, there's tons of like hundreds of data. So it gets us like as practitioner like easier to help our athlete to like maybe jump higher, maybe focus on their eccentric or like ISO. So when it comes to like programming plyometric, let's say an athlete, a guard, he wants to have like a vertical jump. Yeah. So is it like impulse or is it like takeoff velocity you're going to be like focusing on? I know it depends. I know this is a big
one. It does depend. That's a great question. I've talked to a couple people about this on using the force plate to improve what the force plate is testing, which is jump height. And that's really tricky. But at the same time, if you can assess a simple counter movement jump and say, listen, your eccentric duration is way too long, so you're not getting any of that stretch shortening cycle assistance, and you're really just performing what turns out to be a primarily concentric jump. Okay. If we sped that action up and forced that eccentric duration and that eccentric intensity to be a little quicker, are you not strong enough to absorb that new higher eccentric load through the amortization phase, utilize the stretch shortening cycle, and jump higher? Now we're talking, we need to improve eccentric strength, isometric strength. We need to do some of the slower plyometrics, the jump training, to assist in the efficiency of the stretch shortening cycle, right? Or is it that the athlete just doesn't descend very far, right? So he's really, maybe he's a little twitchy, maybe he's a little tendon driven because he doesn't have the muscular strength to descend very far. So he's not giving himself enough time to develop enough power to develop enough vertical takeoff velocity to jump high. But maybe he's a super, super fast athlete. He's probably really good laterally. He's probably, that first step is really good. He's just not vertical. In that aspect, do I want to drive that athlete further, more into a squat jump or a proper counter movement jump to jump higher? Or is he good where he's at and I'm not worried about jump height? That's the conversation you have to have with the athlete of, okay, you want to jump an inch higher, I can help you. And to be quite honest, usually a little basic strength and a little phase of power training will help most of these guys jump a little higher because they haven't had it. I love our system. You go through high school, you go through college, you get to the NBA. You probably touched a weight room before, but the training isn't necessarily long enough or good enough to really see what these guys can do physically. So a lot of times, a basic program will help these guys jump higher. But again, using the force plate to say, where are you lacking? Do we want to fix it? Is I think the question that needs to be asked.
Cool. Love that. So besides force plate, the other like popular like technology, probably popular topic like coaches recently are like discussing is it like GPS. So uh still there's tons of like data. There's like peak velocity, there's like change of like how many like acceleration, deceleration load, all those kind of stuff. Like would you like for long term like tracking the athlete, is there like certain thing you'll look into like
Yeah, that's a fun one too. So we use, I know Catapult's pretty popular. We use Connexon and it's just the RFID system that basically does that, tracks distance, speed, XL, decel, and it can give you a load metric, which is just their aggregate of all the movements that were made on the court and the intensities, and gives you an overall load. Listen, we track it to get a good idea of where the athlete is in time, right? So was it if yesterday was a hard day, we know why it was hard, because it was long and he ran a far way, but he never really hit top speed. So those higher intensity qualities neurologically might still be there, but physically he might be a little tired. If we just had 3 games in 5 days and we've been tracking guys' minutes and he played, 35 minutes each game, plus we had 2 practices during that time. So we really went 5 out of 5 days there. We have the objective data then to go to the coaching staff and to make, informed decisions on, hey, we need to give these guys maybe a recovery day. Or if a guy says, hey, I need to get a lift in, you do, but you just played 40 minutes last night. We need a recovery. We need a recovery mobility session here. We'll get a lift in when you're a little more recovered and we can get a little higher quality. So, again, it's kind of like the force, but it's great to have that objective data, but it's simply a guide. It can't be the decision maker, right? I think, yeah, load management became a big thing. I think the tracking of movement has only perpetuated the instances of load management. I personally, listen, I'm okay with sitting a guy if he's played 3 games in 5 days and he played 40 minutes a game and he needs a break because it's the last third of the season. But load management happens in the off season when we're training guys to accept the load that they're going to be needed to perform at during the season, right? I don't think load management should be playing, you're scheduled for 82 games and you sit for 20 of them. Why? Because you played a lot and connects on the load tracker says that you had a high load yesterday. Who cares? Like, that's what we do as human beings. Who says you can't have 2 hard training days in a row? Who says you can't have 3 hard training days in a row? Right? Everything we learn is like, well, there's a way to do it. You should undulate stress and intensity and load. You're 100% right, but there's nothing that says you can't go 3 hard days and you're guaranteed to get hurt on the 4th day. It's not true, right? Just as easy as if you go 1 hard day and you take another day off, who says you're going to be more prepared on that 3rd day? Nobody. Just because you had a day off. I've had a lot of guys come in off a day off that just looked terrible because they were over recovered and understimulated. So, that's that fine art of coaching. Like, what is the right amount of stress? What's the right period of stress? Can you go 2 days, 3 days? When should you give recovery? That's the fun part. This gives you an ability to track it, but it doesn't tell you what's right and when to apply what stress. So that's the fun part that I think people need to, spend more time and think about a little bit and be a little less critical with themselves, because there really is no right answer.
man, I enjoy this. I so love this.
It's crazy, right? Like, talking training is just, and how to apply stress and how to recover. It's what we do. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
So that leads me to the next question is like, it's gonna be a two-part question. So the first part was, does that mean you guys gonna load the athlete heavy and the volume is gonna be like higher when it's in off season?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll be very blunt. I'll start with in season. In season, so we microdose training, which has kind of become popular in the last couple of years. And all that means is we're having shorter, appropriately intense sessions. So it's not necessarily short and intense all the time, but the volume is much lower, much more frequently. We play 3.5 games a week. So, which, either 3 or 4 games a week. So a guy's going to train for me either 3 or 4 days a week. On top of that, they're also playing 3 to 4 days a week. So that's a huge stress right there. On top of that, they're practicing. So in season training kind of becomes 1B, 1C. It's supplemental to performing because that's all that matters is performing. We're just there to keep them healthy and performing well. So in season, yes, the volume is very low. Off season, listen, man, I throw the kitchen sink at our guys. I want from start. Now, again, we do it smartly. We apply some science and common practice, but we work up to a point where I throw as much volume and as much load and as much intensity at the correct times at these guys as I possibly can, because I know that the season's a grind. There's a lot of basketball stress, and we need to physically prepare for that. We need to metabolically prepare for that. The only way you can do that is by high volume, moving a high load at a high intensity at the appropriate times. And we found good success with that. You prepare the body for stress. And then when it goes through the stress, you don't train in a way that's going to add on to that and perpetuate the stress and the fatigue and the breakdown. You give them a program that's going to help them perform really well and stay on top. So I know it's a little bit two-part answer, but yeah, off season, throw everything at them. In season, give them the smallest effective dose that you possibly can.
Man, I love this. So, um, can you like give us like a clue about like how much volume will be like in a session? Is it like a traditional like periodization? I know this depends. I know, and this probably should like not. This is not the answer for everyone, but like, can you like give
Yeah.
us a clue about like, is it like traditional periodizing, like 3 sets of 12 or like 4 sets of 12? Like,
Yeah, it really depends. We do adhere to kind of the common principles of adaptation here with like, hey, if I want strength, general strength, submax strength, I'm going to be working in that 3 rep to kind of 6, maybe 7 rep range. Hypertrophy, we're going to be in that 7 to 12. If you want, muscular endurance, we're going to be up higher. The sessions you are working with the guys, attention span, I guess. So we're looking at 45 minutes to an hour and 15 in a session. I'll give you a quick rundown. Like if we're going through, I'll give you the general strength, right? General strength usually happens mid to early off season for us. We like to jump right into that. It might be anywhere from, like 6, probably even more, 8 to 12 total exercises, anywhere from 5 to 2 sets of either of those exercises. Like if we're coming in and we're squatting today, we might hit them with like 5 sets of 8. And then we're going to pair that. We'll keep that short, give them their rest time, but we might pair that with just a core and a mobility exercise. But then we might have 2 more tri-sets of exercises after that. That might be, 3x7 or 3x10. I don't adhere. I use 7s. I use 9s. We go crazy with the guys, but we might venture into a little bit of cluster training if we want to keep the volume a little higher, but also want to up the intensity. Nothing's off the books. We like to keep guys engaged. We're going to use things in a proper manner, but the volume might be really high. We'll get in season. A guy will go post game. I might ask for 4 sets of doubles on the deadlift, a core, and he's gone. Like that's it. Another guy might come in. Hey, we're gonna do 3x5 bench press. We're gonna do 3x6 pull down. we're going to do some, maybe he's got an ankle or whatever going on. We're going to do a little extra work for that and you're gone. So it's very short. But man, that 4x2 deadlift, what can we pull today? You know, you look okay. We're going to try to up it a little bit, right? And we'll do it wisely. We're not going to kill a guy, but we want to see some good movement. It doesn't take a whole lot of volume to maintain. So that's kind of where we're at. That's a little bit of a snapshot. I'm not going to lie, it's way more in depth than that. We put quite a bit of thought into our programming, but as a general guideline, like those are the two extremes that we're working off of out of season to in season.
I love it. I love it. So just another question from the previous one you answered. So when it comes to in season, I know it's like pretty short, but like they're gonna play 82 games. That's so much. There's gonna be tendonitis. There's gonna be people like players gonna complain about knee pain, Achilles tendon pain, whatever. So do you guys like? I know that Alex Natara is huge, like huge focus on ISO. So do you guys implement ISO into it?
Tons of ISOs, tons of ISOs. I'll tell you, like we'll look at, you know, patellar tendonitis, distal quad tendonitis, which is common in the NBA. But I'll tell you what, if you take the athlete through a full range of motion, it doesn't have to be a crazy heavy load, but a loaded full range of motion. That's one. If you isolate, hit an isometric at different joint angles for a good amount of time, it's got to be a couple sets of more than 20 seconds each, right? But put them under load isometrically for a good amount of time, right? That's two. And then work eccentrically with load just to get them to accept that load eccentrically through a full range. If you do those three things on a regular basis, your knee issues are going to subside and guys will be great. They will see improvements. Listen, we do that. Knees do flare up. Basketball is a very rough sport on the joints. And we won't necessarily do all those three things at the same time or at once, but if we pick one or two and put a guy on a program, every single time they will get better to some extent. They might not completely clear it, but they will feel better after a little bit of time. So, but again, they've become a huge staple in sort of the maintaining of healthy joints. There's a ton of good research out on them, but I would focus more on, people kind of neglect, like basketball players hate full range of motion. We are fortunate enough to have, you know, a pendulum squat that gives guys a little bit of a brace and they can easily get their knees forward and hips back and take their knees to that full range of motion. I tell guys, I want your hamstrings touching your calves. Like, let those knees glide forward. Let those hips sit down. Man, I think that's been a huge change for us as guys. They don't get stuck in that above 90-degree range because that's where they play. Their knees never go below 90. You know, they never get into good flexion. Now you take them there safely, cautiously, and it just helps these guys so much transfer their healthy knees onto the court. Now they can move at high velocities in a good range of motion. It's really cool to see.
Cool. So that's enough question for like training about technology. I want to ask the last part of the question is like you're the head strength and conditioning coach right now, and you used to work with like different sports, different like teams, and like different environment, and also you have to work with like colleagues in your environment. So as a head strength and conditioning coach, how do you like kind of like lead these athletes, or like and try to like lead your colleague to like do what you want them to do?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I know every coach will probably give you a different answer on how they accomplish it. You know, I think I've been successful doing just that because it's all about the athlete, man. Like, listen, I'll train on my own if I want my goals to get met. But when you look at each of your individual athletes, it doesn't matter, college, professional sports, you know, it's what do they need to succeed? Because that's why we're here, man. Like, I'm here to see every single guy succeed at his goals physically. You know, I want each of my basketball players to be all-stars and get that next $100 million contract and, you know, be set for life. Like that's why we're here. And if that just radiates from you and your athletes know that that's why you're there and that's your only goal, it's easy, man. Like it's really easy. And that's how we approach it. And I ask my staff to do the same thing when talking to them. And heck, you know, Matt, my assistant strength coach here, like I want him to be a head strength coach somewhere. I want him to be a director somewhere. You know, in 10 years, I want to be asking him if I can go work for him because I want him to be his best. And I know he loves strength conditioning and he's gonna help guys the same way that I feel like I'm helping guys. And, you know, that's why we make a great team because he's got that passion too. But it doesn't matter. Athletes, colleagues, you want people to just succeed in life. And what part can we play in that? For us, make them physical beasts, man. Like train these guys to be their absolute best. That's our only goal. And you tell guys that and you show them that and you're there for them and they understand that and the buy-in's right there. That's it.
Cool. So for like coaches who want to be in that league, do you have like any suggestion or like any from your experience like
Yeah, I mean, more jobs are opening up. You know, we have the whole G League going on right now, which is just listen, we're blowing up with the G League. Every G League team's getting a strength coach. I hired my assistant from the G League because I knew what he could do. He was right there in front of me. And hey, if I see that you're confident, I see you love what you're doing, I'm going to take you over a guy who I just talked to on the phone, right? So I tell all young coaches, like no matter where you are, no matter what sport you're working with, give your time to a basketball program if you want to work in basketball. I did that. I was at Notre Dame. I was hired to work with, like I said, fencing, tennis, lacrosse. I was not hired to be the basketball strength coach, but I was at every single training session, every single conditioning session that I could possibly be at on my own time, just so I could learn and stay involved. You know, the head coach at the time gave me a recommendation when I applied for the Bulls job because I was there and I did a good job. You know, those things do pay off, but so many young coaches, just because they're not getting paid to do it or it's not their job, won't dedicate their time. You got to dedicate time if you want to do it. You know, just you just have to do it and you got to stay involved and you can learn from everybody, right? Eventually things work out if you do that. You know, you're gonna run across so many people that are maybe they're video guys or assistant coaches with the team that you're volunteering with, and all of a sudden now they're a head coach at a different program or an assistant somewhere else. They might call you and say, "Hey, I got an opening. I worked with you in the past. I know you because we were face to face. Why don't you come on over and be my strength coach?" That's how the field works. And coaches just got to stay patient and stay dedicated and stay involved. That's my advice to the young ones out there because I was in your shoes and man, it's frustrating. And, you know, I'm very grateful now, but I will never forget how hard it is to, you know, make your way in the field. It's tough.
is it how long did you have the dream to like make it to the league and how long did you have to wait for
Yeah.
the
My, I did a lot of internships that weren't sports related. I did some at some local gyms and working with general population. Um, I played I played a club sport, so it's not like collegiate Division 1. It's more of an intramural, like not great athletes but good athletes. Anyways, I played rugby in college at a club level, and one of my teammates was ahead of me in school, and he was a strength coach, and he got an internship here with the Chicago Bulls as part of his senior. We all do an internship for our senior year to get credit. So he was fortunate enough to be with the Bulls. He left the Bulls because his internship was over, and I was getting done with school. And he called me and he's like, "Hey, you should apply for this internship. I'm supposed to find somebody that I think would do a great job." So he hooked me up. I actually got the internship here in Chicago. I'm not going to say how long ago. It was a long time ago. Um, but from that moment, that's when like I got to get back here. This has to be my goal to have that head strength coach job. And you know, there was a lot of detours along the route after that, and it took a really long time. And honestly, like I never lost track of that goal, but at the same time, I was very, very, very present at where I was and try to do a great job wherever I was. Just trying to, see what I could do as a strength coach with any athlete. So it's been a long time, but I knew I wanted to be here for a very, very, very long time.
Nice, nice. I have like a lot of friends want to like make it to the league, and I think they're gonna like need to hear that.
Yeah, I just spoke with a young strength coach who's graduating college this year, and I told her the same thing. You have to be patient. You just do. If you're always looking for the next thing, you're not going to do a great job where you're at. And the only way you're going to get to the next thing where you want to be is to do a great job where you're at. So just, man, like if you love being a strength coach, be present and be the best strength coach no matter where you're at, and things will work out. So I think you're right. I needed to hear it when I was just getting into the field because I was eager. I wanted the next thing. But as soon as I realized, like, hey, what about this thing right now? What about this internship? What about this lowest level assistant strength coach job that doesn't pay any money? Crush it, kill it, enjoy it, have a good time. It's stressful enough. You don't have to add stress. Have a good time and do a great job. Things tend to work out a lot better that way, but it took me a lot of time to understand that. So that's the first thing I try to tell young coaches: be patient and just enjoy your job.
Nice. So last thing, okay.
Yeah.
I know you're super busy and your colleague are probably super busy. So, and I really enjoy the stuff, the method, the program you mentioned. So how exactly at that this kind of like super busy schedule and be on top of like the industry?
Yeah, scheduling's tough, man. Like I'm at my office right now. We got done about 4.5 hours ago, and I'm still here. We have some other guys in, not just our rostered guys, but we have two ways and G League guys in. But we're going through, as we talked about, force plates metrics and connects on looking at them on the court. Our time is spent going through all these things, writing our programs, double checking our programs, assessing ourselves and our programs to see what works and what didn't work, and then making those adjustments almost every day. We have a training day tomorrow. So what I've been doing for the last 4 hours is going through each guy's program, making sure it's what I want for that guy, because when it was good when I wrote it, might not be good right now that I'm seeing the guy, right? We're getting through all our assessments. So there's just a lot of extra work that goes into it. It's not just being on the floor coaching. That's a big part of it. Being on the floor coaching is a very big part, but you've got to give the time, no matter how busy you are. Your job is to give the best program and the best coaching and the best training. So you got to double check your work. You got to go through it. So the schedule's busy, but hey, it's what we do.
Yeah, love this. Thank you.
Yeah.